The first thing I noticed was the empty space where my name should have been. The honor table sat at the front of the VFW hall, just below the framed photos and the folded flags and glass cases. 8 chairs, 8 coffee cups, 8 little white place cards folded like church bulletins. Mine was gone. I stood there with my hand on the back of the 4th chair, the same chair I had sat in for years, while the room kept moving around me. Men laughed near the coffee station. Someone tested the microphone. A tray of rolls came out from the kitchen. But my name was not on that table. Caleb Norris came up beside me with a stack of programs under his arm. He was 42, sharp shirt, clipped voice, always looking like he had 3 things to fix before anybody asked. "Hank," he said, a little too softly, "we had to make a few seating changes tonight." I looked at the chair again. "I can see that." He shifted the programs from one hand to the other. "We needed those seats for the members who've been carrying things lately." For a second, the whole hall seemed to narrow around that one sentence. Not yelling, not cruel on its face, just clean enough to cut without leaving fingerprints. I glanced toward the front windows, where the new flagpole stood outside in the fading light. The dedication plaque had been covered with a blue cloth for the dinner, waiting for tomorrow morning. Tonight was supposed to be about those names. I had come early because I wanted to see the families when they walked in. Dale Whitcomb was supposed to be there, and I knew what seeing his brother's name on that plaque would mean to him, so I let go of the chair. Caleb gave me a relieved little nod, like I had made things easier for everyone. "There's a spot for you over by table 8, he said, near the coffee. Easier to get around from there, near the coffee. I took the program he handed me and walked to the side of the room. A few people saw me move, then looked away in that careful way folks do when they don't want to be part of something uncomfortable. The chair at table 8 faced the kitchen door. I sat down anyway. A waitress passed with iced tea. Somebody at the honor table laughed. Caleb placed another man's card where mine should have been and smoothed it with 2 fingers. I opened the dedication program and looked down at the list of names printed inside. "Tonight's for them," I said under my breath. Across the hall, Marcy Bell stopped beside the registration table with a stack of napkins in her hands. She was looking at me. Then she looked at the honor table, and her face changed. Marcy Bell did not come straight over at first. She stood by the registration table with napkins in one hand and a pencil tucked behind her ear, watching me like she was trying to solve a problem without letting the room see her thinking. I kept my eyes on the program. The names were printed in neat black letters under the heading for the new flagpole dedication. Some I knew from fish fries, some from funerals, some from old men sitting alone at the bar telling the same stories until nobody minded hearing them again. A young member I barely knew sat down at the honor table where my place had been. Caleb leaned beside him, pointed toward the stage, and said something that made the man smile. I folded my hands around my coffee cup. Marcy finally walked over and set a fresh napkin beside my plate. "Hank," she said quietly, "you doing all right over here? I've had worse seats." She did not smile. "That isn't what I asked." I looked up then. Marcy had run that hall for years. She knew when the freezer was dying by the sound it made, knew which widows wanted decaf, knew which old men needed an extra minute before standing. "I'm fine," I said. Her eyes moved to the front table again. "I printed those cards myself this afternoon. That made me still." Before I could answer, Caleb called her name from near the microphone. "Marcy, we're short 2 dinner programs." "Office shelf," she called back. But her voice had changed. She left me there and crossed the hall fast, not running, just purposeful. I watched her pass the dessert table, push through the office door, and disappear behind the half-open blinds. A few minutes went by. The room kept filling. Chairs scraped. The coffee urn hissed. Somebody started arranging raffle baskets near the wall like nothing important had happened. Then Marcy appeared in the office doorway holding a stack of papers against her chest. She looked toward Caleb first. Then she looked at me. There was something in her face now that was not confusion anymore. She came back to my table and lowered her voice. "Hank, did anyone tell you this was changed before tonight?" I shook my head. "No," her thumb pressed into the edge of the papers. "Because I put your card at the honor table myself. Maybe somebody needed the seat. That's not what I asked either." She glanced over her shoulder, then slipped the top paper just far enough for me to see a corner of thick white cardstock. It was bent across the middle. I saw the first letters before she covered it again. Harold Dawson. Marcy swallowed once and said, "I found it behind the office printer, mixed in with the discarded seating revisions. Marcy did not leave the card on my table." She held it close against the papers. Like even showing it in the open might make the room turn and stare. "Russ needs to see this," she said. Russell Pritchard was standing near the back wall, straightening the small flags in the centerpiece boxes. At 78, Russ moved slower than he used to, but his eyes still missed almost nothing. Marcy crossed to him first. I stayed seated because I could feel people watching now. Not openly. Just quick glances over shoulders, the kind that asked questions without wanting answers. Russ took the bent chair card from Marcy. His face did not change right away. He looked at my printed name, then at the honor table, then back at the card as if he was checking whether paper could lie. "Where was this?" he asked. "Behind the office printer," Marcy said. With the seating revisions, Russ looked toward me then. I gave him a small nod. Not permission exactly. More like I was telling him I would not make a scene if he needed to look. He tucked the card under his arm and walked into the office with Marcy behind him. Through the blinds, I could see them moving around the desk. Russ opened the file drawer where the event folders were kept. Marcy pointed to something on the top shelf. He pulled down a blue folder marked dinner seating and laid it flat. The hall kept humming. Caleb was at the microphone now, tapping it twice. "We'll get started in about 10 minutes, folks. 10 minutes. That was how long it took for a man to lose a place people once assumed was his." Russ came back out carrying a single page. Marcy followed him with the bent chair card in her hand. He stopped beside my table, but he did not sit. "Hank," he said quietly, "I found the original seating chart." I looked up. Russ turned the paper so only I could see it. There it was in plain type, halfway down the first column. Harold Dawson. Honor table, seat 4. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice even. "So I didn't imagine it." "No," Russ said. "You didn't." That was the first kindness of the night. Not comfort. Confirmation. Marcy let out a slow breath beside him. "I knew I printed it." Russ folded the original chart once and looked back toward the office. His jaw worked under the gray stubble. "There's another chart," he said. Marcy frowned. "Another?" Russ nodded, but his eyes stayed on the honor table. "A revised one," he said. "And on that one, you're not in seat 4 anymore." Russ brought the revised chart to my table folded in half, like he did not want the whole hall reading over his shoulder. Marcy stood beside him, arms crossed tight, watching Caleb move between tables with that same busy calm. Dinner was about to start, and nobody at the honor table seemed to know anything was wrong. Russ set the two charts side by side. On the original one, my name sat where it always had. Honor table, seat 4. On the revised one, a black line cut through it. My name had been moved to table 8, written in blue pen near the bottom margin. The handwriting was neat, almost careful, which somehow made it worse. Marcy leaned closer. "Who approved that?" Russ did not answer right away. He tapped the corner of the page where a note had been written beside the honor table. It was short enough to read in one glance. Current contributors up front. Marcy's face hardened. "That's not a seating note." "No," Russ said. "It's a judgment." I looked toward the front of the hall. Caleb was handing programs to 2 younger members and nodding toward the honor table, like he was placing people exactly where they belonged. He did not look ashamed. He looked certain. That was the part that settled heavy in my chest. Russ lowered his voice. "Hank, did you and Caleb have words recently?" "No? You miss a work day?" I missed two this spring. I kept my eyes on the paper. Doctor told me ladders and wet pavement weren't a good combination anymore. Marcy looked at me then, softer. You didn't tell anybody that. Wasn't anybody's business. Russ let out a breath through his nose. Across the room, Caleb lifted the microphone again. Folks, before dinner, we'll say a few words about tomorrow morning's flagpole dedication. At that, Russ went still. His eyes moved from the revised seating chart to the program beside my plate. The cover showed a picture of the new flagpole outside, the plaque still covered until morning. Russ picked up the program and opened it once, just enough to look at the dedication page. He did not say anything for several seconds. What is it? Marcy asked. Russ folded the program closed and looked back at the revised chart. This dinner isn't just dinner, he said. I know, Marcy said. It's the dedication weekend. Russ nodded slowly, but his eyes had changed. The dedication records aren't in this folder, he said. They're in the quartermaster cabinet, I looked at him. Russ kept his voice low. In the old flagpole binder. Russ did not move right away. He looked across the hall at Caleb, then at the covered plaque visible through the front window. Dinner plates were being set down now, and the whole room had that warm clatter that makes people think nothing serious can happen. Russ, Marcy said, what's in the binder? He folded the revised seating chart and slid it under his arm. Everything the post was supposed to remember. I pushed my chair back a few inches. Leave it be until after dinner, Russ looked at me. Hank, those families came here for the dedication, I said. Not to watch old men argue over a chair. Marcy's mouth tightened, but she did not interrupt. Russ leaned one hand on the table. This stopped being just a chair when somebody wrote current contributors beside your name. That landed harder than I wanted it to. At the microphone, Caleb was thanking everyone for coming. He spoke about new energy, new volunteers, keeping the post alive for another generation. People nodded along because most of it sounded right. That was the trouble. A wrong thing can wear a clean shirt. Russ lowered his voice. I'm not going to make a scene, but I am going to check the records. I looked down at the dedication program, at the covered list waiting outside. Privately, Russ said. He and Marcy crossed to the office while Caleb kept talking. I stayed at table 8, hands folded, feeling every scrape of silverware like it was happening too close to my skin. The office door opened, then shut halfway. Through the blinds, I saw Russ unlock the quartermaster cabinet. It was the old gray one near the file boxes, the one nobody touched unless a bill was missing or a vendor wanted proof from 3 years back. Marcy held the revised seating chart while Russ reached to the bottom shelf. He pulled out a thick black binder with a cracked cover and a strip of white tape across the front. Even from my table, I could read the block letters. Flagpole 2026 dedication. Russ set it on the desk like it weighed more than paper. Marcy glanced through the blinds toward me, then back at the binder. Russ opened it carefully. Not fast, not dramatic, like he already knew old records had a way of embarrassing the living. The first tab was yellowed at the edge. Invoices. Russ turned one page. Then he stopped. Marcy leaned closer, and whatever she saw made her hand go still on the chart. Russ looked through the blinds at me, his face pale under the office light. On the first contractor invoice, clipped to the payment copy, was a name he had not expected to see. Mine. Russ did not bring the binder into the hall. He motioned once through the blinds, small and controlled, and I knew he wanted me in the office. I stood slowly, leaving my dinner plate untouched, and crossed behind the room while Caleb kept talking about tomorrow morning like every word was nailed down. Inside the office, the air felt warmer. Marcy shut the door most of the way, leaving it cracked just enough that it did not look secret. Russ had the binder open on the desk, one finger resting beside a contractor invoice. Read the top line, he said. I looked down. Mason County Flagpole Service. Base repair, pulley replacement, exterior light adjustment. The date was 3 months earlier. Marcy touched the edge of the invoice. This was the work they're dedicating tomorrow? Part of it, Russ said. I kept my eyes on the paper. The pole was leaning after that storm. Russ turned the invoice slightly. The post paid the deposit. He lifted a clipped copy from behind it. A cashier's check receipt. The balance line had been circled in pencil. Under the payer information, the name was plain enough that nobody had to guess. H. Dawson. Marcy looked at me. Hank! It was a repair, I said. It was $840, Russ said. The old base was cracked. That's not what I'm asking. I looked toward the cracked office door. Caleb's voice carried through it, bright and confident, thanking the younger work crew for making the dedication possible. Nobody in the hall turned toward the office. Russ tapped the invoice again. Why didn't this go through the memorial fund? Because the fund was short. How short? Short enough. Marcy took in a slow breath, the way people do when they are trying not to say too much too soon. Russ sat back in the metal office chair. Hank, this invoice says the flagpole repair could not be completed until the balance cleared. Then it cleared. That is not nothing. I did not answer. For a moment, the only sound was the microphone feedback outside and the clink of forks against plates. Russ softened his voice. They moved you from the honor table because they thought you hadn't been carrying anything. I looked at the binder, not at him. Russ, I said, one check doesn't make a man important. No, he said, but it makes this seating note look foolish. Marcy glanced back at the binder tabs. There's more paperwork behind this. I saw the next divider then. County permit. My stomach tightened. I reached out and closed 2 fingers on the edge of the page before Russ could turn it. Check the permit, I said quietly. Before you say anything to anybody, check the permit. Russ waited until my hand moved off the page. He did not ask why I sounded worried. He only turned to the next divider, the one marked county permit, and eased the papers out from the plastic sleeve. Marcy leaned against the filing cabinet with her arms folded, watching the office door like she expected the whole hall to come through it at once. Outside, Caleb's voice faded under applause. Inside, Russ unfolded a county form stamped in blue ink. Flagpole base repair, exterior lighting adjustment, public property visibility clearance, Marcy frowned. They needed a permit for that? For the light and the concrete work, Russ said. County wanted it filed before the contractor touched the base. He flipped the permit over. A receipt was stapled to the back. The fee was not much compared to the repair bill, but I still felt it land in the room. Small costs have a way of stopping good things when nobody wants to claim them. Russ read the receipt silently. Then he pulled the stapled copy closer to the desk lamp. Marcy saw it before he spoke. That's Hank again, isn't it? Russ did not answer right away. He slid the paper toward me. The money order copy had my full name typed across the payer line. Harold Dawson. Marcy looked from the receipt to me. You paid the permit, too, I shrugged once. County office didn't take promises. Russ gave me a look over the top of his glasses. You always did make jokes when you were cornered. I'm not cornered. No, he said. You're documented. That one got through. I looked away first. Through the crack in the door, I could see the honor table. The men there were eating now, passing rolls, lifting glasses, leaning back in chairs that looked steadier than mine felt. Marcy touched the permit receipt lightly. If this wasn't paid, could they have finished the work? Russ shook his head. Not legally. She let that sit. I reached for the binder. That's enough. Russ kept his palm on the page. You told me to check the permit. I checked it. Then you know enough not to interrupt the dinner. Hank, Marcy said, softer now, why hide this? I looked at the covered plaque through the office blinds. Because nobody should have to stand under a flag and wonder if their family could afford a name. Russ went still. He turned the permit papers back into their sleeve, but another section slid loose beneath them. 2 thin pages slipped halfway out from behind the divider. Marcy caught them before they fell. They were plaque drafts, same heading. same flagpole dedication. But the first one had fewer names than the second. Marcy laid the two plaque drafts side by side on the desk. At first glance, they looked almost the same. Same heading, same border, same line at the bottom about the flagpole dedication scheduled for tomorrow morning. Then Russ put one finger on the first draft. "Count them," he said. I did not need to. I already knew where this was going, and I hated that he was making the paper say it out loud. Marcy counted under her breath, moving her finger down the first list of names. Then she moved to the second draft and started again. She stopped halfway. "There are more on this one," she said. Russ nodded. 6 more! The office felt smaller. Outside, the dinner had moved into that comfortable middle part where men talked louder and chairs turned sideways. Caleb was laughing at the honor table with 2 younger members, one hand resting near the microphone. Marcy looked down at the drafts again. "Maybe the first one was incomplete?" "Maybe," Russ said. But his voice said he did not believe it. He pulled the second draft closer. The added names were marked with small pencil checks in the margin. Not dramatic, not circled, just checked like someone had been careful not to forget them. Beside 3 of those checks were tiny notes: engraving, pending, family delayed, hold until paid. Marcy's expression changed. "Hold until paid?" Russ took off his glasses and wiped them with his thumb. "Engravers don't add names for free." I looked through the blinds toward the covered plaque outside. That blue cloth seemed heavier now. Marcy turned to me. "Hank, what does this mean?" "It means the first draft wasn't ready." "That's not an answer." "No," Russ said quietly. "It's protection." I shot him a look. He held it. There was no accusation in his face, only the tired patience of a man who had kept records long enough to know when kindness had been hidden inside numbers. Marcy picked up the second draft again. If these names were added later, there should be an estimate somewhere. Russ flipped behind the draft and found a thin paper from the engraving company. It listed per name charges, layout changes, and a small rush fee for completing the plaque before dedication weekend. The total at the bottom had been underlined once, not by me, by Russ, years of quartermaster habit making his hand move before his mouth did. Marcy read the number and whispered, "That would be hard for some families." "Yes," Russ said. He looked over the added names again, slower this time. Then his finger stopped near the bottom of the second draft. His mouth tightened. "What?" Marcy asked. Russ did not answer right away. He turned the draft so I could see the name his finger had found, Earl Whitcomb. Across the hall, Dale Whitcomb was sitting alone near the wall, holding his dinner program with both hands. Russ did not call Dale over right away. He stood at the office blinds, watching the 70-year-old man sit alone near the wall with his dinner program folded in both hands. Dale Whitcomb had worn a jacket too heavy for the warm hall, and he kept looking toward the covered plaque outside like he was afraid it might disappear. Marcy lowered her voice. "You sure we should involve him?" Russ looked down at the draft again. "His brother's name is on this page. That doesn't mean he knows why." "No," Russ said. "That's why we ask careful." I stayed by the desk. "Russ," he turned. "Don't embarrass him," Russ nodded once. "I won't." A minute later, Dale stepped into the office with his program still in his hands. He looked from Russ to Marcy to me, then gave a worried little laugh that did not reach his eyes. "Somebody forget to sign something?" he asked. Russ closed the office door halfway. "Dale, we're checking the dedication draft." "I need you to look at one name." That small laugh disappeared. Russ placed the second plaque draft on the desk and turned it so Dale could read it. He did not point at first. He let Dale find it himself. Dale's eyes moved down the list. Then they stopped. His thumb pressed into the edge of the program until the paper bent. "Earl," he said. No one answered. Dale leaned closer, as if the name might change if he looked hard enough. "That's my brother," Russ nodded. "Yes," Dale swallowed. "They told me his name made it on the final plaque." It did, Russ said. Dale's face tightened with something between relief and shame. I wasn't sure it would. Marcy's voice softened. Why not? Dale kept his eyes on the paper. Engraving cost came at a bad time. My daughter had surgery bills, and Earl didn't leave much. I told Caleb I might need a few weeks. He tried to fold the program, but his hands did not line up. I hated saying it, Dale added. A man serves, lives a decent life, and then his brother has to ask for time to put his name on a piece of metal. The room went quiet. That was the first time the draft stopped being paperwork. It became a brother standing in an office, afraid he had almost failed the dead. Russ turned the page slightly, showing the pencil note beside Earl's name. Hold until paid. Dale stared at it. But it wasn't held. No, Russ said. Marcy opened the binder again, careful now, like it might bruise someone. Behind the plaque drafts, a folded sheet slid out from a clear sleeve and landed against the desk calendar. Russ unfolded it. It was a list, 6 names. The same 6 names added to the final plaque. Russ spread the folded list beside the final plaque draft. 6 names on the list. 6 added names on the plaque. No extras, no missing lines, no room left to pretend it was coincidence. Dale stood very still. Marcy pulled another sleeve from the binder. This one marked payments and set it beside Russ's hand. These are the copies? Russ nodded. Quartermaster copies, money orders, cashier's checks, receipt stubs. I looked toward the office door. You don't need to do this tonight. Russ did not look up. Yes, Hank, we do. He matched the first name on the list to an engraving charge, then to a receipt. The payer line was short. H. Dawson. Marcy matched the second. Same thing. By the third name, Dale had to sit down in the spare folding chair near the file cabinet. He held the program against his knee and stared at his brother's name like it had become heavier than paper. Russ kept going. Each added name had a cost note. Each cost note had a receipt. Each receipt traced back to one of my money orders or cashier's checks. No speeches, no guessing. Just 6 quiet lines of proof. Marcy touched the final plaque draft. So every name added to this year's dedication plaque, Russ finished it for her, was covered by Hank. Dale looked at me then. His eyes were wet, but he did not cry. You paid for Earl? I kept my hands in my pockets. Earl belonged on that plaque. Dale's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Russ turned one more payment copy toward the desk lamp. Engraving changes, rush fee, programs, and the shortfall on family seating for tomorrow morning. Marcy whispered, The folding chairs? I shrugged. Some of those widows can't stand through a whole ceremony. That was when the office door opened. Caleb stepped in with 2 dinner programs in one hand. Marcy, I was told the extra programs were. He stopped. His eyes moved from Dale in the chair, to the open binder, to the plaque draft, to the payment copies spread across the desk. Nobody accused him. That made it worse. Russ picked up the revised seating chart and placed it beside the payment records. The note about current contributors sat there in plain blue ink. Caleb read it. Then he looked at my name on the cashier's check copies. His face lost its certainty one piece at a time. Marcy said nothing. Dale said nothing. Russ only closed his hand over the folded list of added names. Caleb looked through the office blinds toward the honor table. Then he looked back at me. Caleb did not speak at first. He stood in the office doorway with the dinner programs bent in his hand, staring at the revised seating chart beside the payment records. The blue ink note looked smaller now, but meaner. Russ did not explain it for him. He only turned the binder so Caleb could see the final plaque draft, the added name list, and the copies with my name on them. One page after another, quiet as a man laying boards across a broken place, Caleb swallowed. I didn't know. Nobody answered. That was the mercy of it, and the weight. He looked at Dale, still sitting near the file cabinet with Earl's name on the program in his lap. Then he looked at me. I kept my hands in my pockets. The dinner is still going. Caleb nodded once, but his eyes had gone to the seating chart. That note was mine. Russ's voice stayed calm. We know. Caleb waited, maybe expecting anger, maybe hoping for it because anger gives a man something to push against. But Russ only slid the bent chair card across the desk. Caleb picked it up. For a second, he just held it, reading my name like it had become evidence against the way he saw the room. Then he straightened it carefully with both hands. Marcy opened the office door. The hall noise came in at once. Forks, chairs, low laughter, the microphone humming near the honor table. Caleb stepped out first, still holding the chair card. I stayed where I was. Dale rose from the folding chair. Without a word, he walked past me into the hall and put both hands on the back of his own chair at the honor table. People noticed then. Dale lifted the chair, carried it across the room, and set it in the open space beside the fourth place setting. Caleb followed, pulled another chair into alignment, and placed my card where it had been meant to sit. No announcement. No speech. Just a chair returning to the place it should not have lost. The room quieted in pieces. Marcy picked up the coffee cup from my side table and carried it to the honor table. Russ came behind her with the closed flagpole binder under one arm. Caleb looked back toward the office, then toward me. Hank, he said, loud enough for only the nearest tables to hear, your seat is ready. I walked slowly because my knees were not as proud as the rest of me. When I reached the table, Dale pulled the chair out. His hand trembled on the back rail, but he did not let go until I sat. Caleb stepped away from the microphone. He took the dawn ceremony card from his shirt pocket, looked at it once, and handed it to Russ. Then he turned to me. Tomorrow morning, he said, voice rough but steady, will you hold the rope? Dawn came cold and clear, the kind of morning that made every sound carry. The VFW hall was quiet behind us, but the flagpole stood in front like it had been waiting all night. The blue cloth was gone from the plaque now, and the names caught the first pale light. Russ stood on one side of me with the binder tucked under his arm. Dale stood on the other, one hand resting near his brother's name. He did not say anything at first. He only touched the letters once, then stepped back like he had finally let himself believe they were real. Caleb came out last. He was not wearing the easy confidence he had worn the night before. He walked over, stopped a few feet from me, and held out the rope without making a speech. I looked at it, then at him. I should have asked before I moved that chair, he said quietly. I took the rope. Yes, you should have, he nodded. That was all it needed to be. Russ gave the smallest nod, and I pulled the rope hand over hand. The flag rose slowly, snapping once when the morning wind found it. Nobody clapped. That would have felt too easy. We just stood there while the flag climbed above the plaque, above the hall, above all the things men give and never know how to talk about. After a while, Dale cleared his throat. Earl would have liked this. I looked at his brother's name. He earned it. Dale turned toward me, eyes red but steady. So did you? I did not answer because some words are easier to receive when nobody makes you hold them too long. Inside the hall, Russ laid the flagpole binder on the office desk. Caleb stood beside him while Marcy opened the seating folder and pulled out a clean sheet of paper. The new rule was short. No honor table changes without quartermaster review. Caleb signed it first, not because anyone forced him, because a man who moves a chair ought to help make sure it does not happen again. Marcy slid my restored chair card across the desk to Russ. It was still bent faintly through the middle, but my name could be read clear enough. Russ opened the front pocket of the flagpole binder. Inside was the folded list of names added to that year's plaque. He placed my chair card beside it, smoothing the edge once with his thumb. Outside, the flag moved in the morning light, and in that old black binder, the chair they had taken from me rested beside the names I had only wanted them to remember.